Hello everyone, I am Oinam Hemlata Devi from Ambedkar University, Delhi. Today I am going to discuss a topic titled Approaches to Cultural Ecology. In simple words, cultural ecology can be defined as the way in which humans adapt to their physical environment. It was developed in the 20th century as a social theory that explains the evolution of societies and culture. Cultural ecology sees humans as a part of a larger ecosystem in which we participate and struggle in a chain of networks for subsistence. In this process, humans are driven and controlled by forces like energy and resources. The term cultural ecology is believed to have been coined by the anthropologist Julian Stewart, who believed that human cultural practices are shaped and changed in the course of their adaptation to their environment. That is, the influence of the environment on the social and cultural order. Leslie A. White, a student of Stewart, gave further elaboration with his theory of energy that amount of energy harnessed by societies allow greater social differentiation, modes of production or causes of change, a concern than mere historical reconstructions. Both of them, Stewart and White, proposed that evolution of cultures is a multilinear process, thereby rejecting the theory of unilinear evolution. It is also known as neo-evolutionism. The social theory about the evolution of society and culture in 19th century was unilinear theory, where societies evolved from primitive to savagery and savagery to civilization. It was believed that each society will follow the linear path in the process of growth and development. However, as mentioned above, this theory was rejected by the multilinear theory, arguing that individual societies exist based on their historical and ecological context, which is specific to them, not necessary that they should have to pass the linear sequence. From this figure on the right side, it is known that a society may progress or start existing starting from an agricultural based production, that is one of the criteria of civilization. It is not necessary that they should have experienced the previous two stages of social evolution, that is hunting and gathering or pastoralism as forms of livelihood, to justify the linear theory that was given by the 19th century scholars. Different forms of society are evolved based on the ecological and historical context of the area. This is the central argument of multilinear evolution. Multilinear evolution shows that societies can evolve from any of the stages of development depending on the ecological context and man's adaptation to the environment using technologies and knowledges of resource that is available or economics of resources. According to Julian Stewart, notion of progress from simple to complex society was rejected. Instead, he gave attention to adaptation, which is adopted from Darwin's theory of evolution, that all societies had to adapt to their environment in some ways or other. Culture change can occur at different rates based on the level of adaptation to environments. According to Leslie A. White, culture evolves as the amount of energy harnessed per capita per year is increased, or as the efficiency of the instrumental means of putting the energy to work is increased. So, he gave the formula of energy, that is C equal to E into T, where E is the measure of energy consumed per capita per year, T is the measure of efficiency of technical factors utilizing the energy, and C represents the degree of cultural development. Now, The concept of cultural ecology and its justification in the social theory of evolution is clear. From our study, we will take the definition given by Winthrop that cultural ecology is the study of the adaptation of human societies or populations to their environments. Emphasis is on the arrangements of technique, economy, and social organization through which culture mediates the experiences of the natural world. In order to understand cultural ecology, we need to bring major social theories regarding the interaction between culture and environment that shape the process of human adaptation. Environmental determinism is the first major theory. In simple words, it is an idea that the environment shapes human culture. It shows that the environment and its factors determine the cultural components of mankind in the form of different characteristics such as types of houses and economic institutions. In other words, the development of human culture and society is dependent on the actions of environmental factors that allow the growth of a feasible culture or cultural items or components. It means that the environment is the prime mover of any forms of cultural development or cultural traits and elements in human society. As a result, it is considered as the determiner of the overall human being's behavior and attitude culturally and socially. It means that determinism defines human beings' societal behavior or societies into different categories or groups by shaping a society's culture and cultural components. For example, the Inuits, which are commonly known as the Eskimos, their livelihood aspects are dependent on the harsh climatic conditions or the kinds of the environment they inhabit, or hill people's life and living conditions that are related to altitudes and topography. In the past, their form of living, such as houses, occupations, tools and implements, and labor division, indicated that environmental influence is very powerful. However, the Inuits had already changed with time. The means of livelihood and ways of living among the contemporary world's Inuits could notice a drastic change starting from the 19th to the early 20th centuries. Today's Inuit region has various technological and infrastructural development. People live in cities or upcoming small towns. It signifies the occurrence of major changes and adaptation in their lifestyle and living conditions. It means that the theory of determinism, which was popular in the 19th century, mainly through the geographer Rachel and his followers, became redundant with the changing climatic conditions, environmental conditions, technological development, and adaptability. From the critical perspectives, various claims and counterclaims over this theory of determinism interpreted that this theory is an idea used as a tool for colonialism or racism, in short, a product of Western thoughts and ideas. To support this argument, we can take an example that in the past, favorable geographical factors and availability of raw materials, particularly for making guns and military armors in Europe, enabled a successful European Western expansion of colonialism in different parts of the world. And the details of it one can definitely go and find out by reading Jared Diamond's book Guns, Germ and Steel. Determinism theory was therefore used from the vantage point of Europeans or the West, representing their superiority over the people of tropical climates such as Africa, Asia, etc. Later, a new approach to understand the environment called neo-environmental determinism developed, focusing on how environmental factors influence economic and political institutions, including the state formation of human societies, rather than directly determining or linking on culture and cultural behavior only. Such ideas of looking beyond the nature, the shaping of culture, originated from the instances of the availability of different cultures under similar environmental conditions. It allows inquiring about the cultural variation present in similar environmental settings. It can be said as the idea resulted from the changes and reactions developed against the theory of environmental determinism mentioned above. The rise of environmental possibilism theory took place during the period between the 1920s and 30s. The French geographer Paul Vidal became the founder of this idea, and his famous quote, I quote, "Nature sets limits and offers possibilities for human settlement, but the way man reacts and adjusts to these conditions depends on his own traditional way of life," unquote, is always noteworthy. He did not agree with the complete role of the environment in human societies, as the environment also changes with the development of knowledge and technology. In contemporary days, any society will not rely entirely on the natural environment. Instead, technology offers possible options. Technology is a byproduct of human mind, and with this help, succeeding generations will act as agents to interact and adjust to a given environment. Thus, possibilism is another theory of cultural or human existence that was immersed in opposition to determinism. It suggests that environmental factors do not determine but enable or limit culture and cultural practices. So, we can note that it is not only food and means of livelihood for which communities depend on their environment, but different cultural practices such as art, religion, and other aspects of human life also interact with the environment. In anthropology, the American anthropologist Franz Boas strongly reacted against environmental determinism and focused on culture through his historical particularism theory. His theory of historical particularism suggested that all cultures, irrespective of their environmental condition, will have their specific history, and with this, they develop the culture as an ongoing process across generations. Here, the emphasis was on the cultural history and diffusion, in which these factors become the essence in the explanation of human evolution. If we continue with the examples of the Inuits or Eskimos discussed in environmental determinism, harsh cold climatic conditions and physical environment limit various production activities of the people. It may be plantation or gardening, mining, where the physical environment in the Arctic region becomes a barrier. However, possibilists argue that some actions and efforts automatically become part of local culture or cultural history with time. This, in combination with migration and diffusion of cultural items and elements, including technological know-how, favors better alternatives. They did not completely rely on limited occupations or cultural practices. Mention may be made of greenhouse technology introduced in the late 20th century, and currently plantation is possible in the harsh physical environment of the Inuits in Alaska. Population in the Inuit pockets have now become bigger, along with greater facilities and people becoming more aware from different parts of the world. Similarly, we can take another example from India itself, as Indian societies mainly live on agriculture and agricultural activities. Here, farmers rely on rain-fed monsoonal agricultural activities irrespective of their physical conditions of the environment. The agricultural activities performed are widespread across India despite the limitations provided by the environment. Therefore, the limitations, however, do not stop cultivating grains and vegetables across India. Instead, A variant of grains such as wheat, barley, paddy, cotton, high-yield hybrid seeds of varieties are introduced and cultivated. For instance, again, the hill people of northeastern India do not practice wet paddy cultivation unlike the plains, as the steepness of the hill slopes limits the process of wet cultivation. However, there is a possibility of paddy plantation through jhuming or sifting cultivation. The terrace cultivation becomes possible if the slopes are favorable for it. It shows that humans can mold and interact with the surrounding environment despite the restrictions available, that is, we call it as environmental possibilism. Thus, environmental possibilism is also considered as cultural determinism by some scholars, with the belief that culture and cultural practices, particularly technology, shapes or control the environment. The environment acts at the periphery. From this, there is always the dilemma of whether one should choose determinism or possibilism. To answer and delve further, mutual interaction theory or mutualism has added a new dimension in understanding man-nature relationships and successful understanding of human adaptation. Suppose if a man has developed a technique for soil conservation, then it can be questioned that whether it has to be considered as a determinist or a possibilist approach, or can it be taken as both. In this case, the environment has directed man to develop a technique to control soil, while man has become an expert in controlling the unpleasant nature's attitude that we call culture. Whether such an act would symbolize determinism or possibilism is a difficult notion. So, the approach seeking beyond this relation is how both the actions reciprocate one another, or we call the third theory of human adaptation, that is mutualism. Mutualism can be well explained by two models, that is ecosystem approach and direct perception approach. In ecosystem, we know that this is a term developed by Tansley, Oinam and others in biology in 30s and 40s. And in social science, it has been started using in 1960s. To study the interactional process, according to Rappaport, both living and non-living substances exchange materials within a limited territory or biosphere. Hardesty stresses on a dynamic set of relationships between living and non-living things, where it is successful provided that there are energy flow and material exchanges. Ellen focuses on the processes of maintaining homeostasis when exchanging the material as well as energy flow in any of the relationships present. So, ecosystem approach deals with the mutual interaction of components present within a system, including human culture and behavior. It is important to note that any extra effort or emphasis on a particular species or a component might bring the risk of losing the nature of homeostasis, or the risk of disturbing the already existing stability in the whole structure of network that is present in a defined ecosystem. Direct perception model signifies an understanding of man-environment relationship through perceptions and interpretations. It is culture which explains the meanings and actions together or constructs ideas. According to Tim Ingold, perception should be seen as different from interpretation. People do not need to construct reality in order to perceive it. Rather, perception happens directly through one's active involvement or participation in it. Similarly, people do not need to know the world in order to act in it. Rather, it has been known through one's action by making use of what has been offered by environment. It is therefore considered that direct perception of environment and people with some cognitive thoughts happen only when there is active involvement in the system. Perception is the creation of knowledge through action and participation, and the world has been perceived into beings or entities as people act on it. So, human adaptation can be perceived and interpreted through participation and actions instead of using ideas constructed by others. We can even take the example of previous approaches of determinism and possibilism. The two approaches, ecosystem approach and direct perception approach, which is also called as ecological functionalism, provides the logic of understanding man-environment relationship through the network of relations involving material exchange and energy flow, as well as the active involvement into it to interpret the concept of perception. Later on, various other approaches have been developed to understand man-nature relationships such as ethnobiology, historical ecology, political ecology, behavioral ecology. Of these, political ecology occupies a prominent place in recent times across disciplines. It is also an approach neglected by the cultural ecologists, particularly considering the power relations and politics involved, or what we call the political aspects. So in short, political ecology is a knowledge politics and intervention. It questions to environmental issues and change. It also shows resistance to an agenda related to environmental resource management. According to Paul Robbins, political ecology is like a hatchet, where political ecology acts as a critic, that is, of the ways that things are met or created are analyzed and criticized. Simultaneously, it provides suggestions and ideas comparable to a plow, means a thorough discussion and investigation how a plow functions. So political ecology acts as a sustainable research by helping in building new ideas. In this case, we can take the example of Michael Watts' studies on hazards and crisis, where Watts concluded that droughts may or may not lead to famine, but famines are created. So political ecology can be defined as the argument or perspective which stresses on political economy, while others point to more formal political institutions. Some stress on environmental change, while others emphasize on the narratives or stories about that change. Common elements and definitions together suggest that political ecology represents an explicit alternative to apolitical ecology, that it works from a common set of assumptions and that it employs a reasonably consistent mode of explanation. Political ecology is therefore a means for the study of the interaction between man and nature, the power relations established among different agents of adaptations and resource management. It is understood in different paradigms, particularly focusing on the politics involved over nature and natural resources, also discuss the impacts of environmental actions. There are 5 major dominant narratives of political ecology, that is degradation and marginalization, conservation and control, environmental conflict and exclusion, environmental subjects and identity, political objects and actors. Focus on any of the 5 themes of political ecology highlights political economy, power relations or politics involved in the overall understanding of man-nature relationship. Thus, when we are trying to understand cultural ecology, we can say that cultural ecology deals with the relationship between human and nature, explaining the adaptational aspects of a community or society, bringing different perspectives. The nature of relationship may be simple or complex depending on the ecological niche of the particular society. This process of adaptation thus becomes a cultural process. It deals with the knowledge of how environment and technology play an important role in shaping human behavior. Thank you.